Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Robert McCall lives a quiet routine life, doing a storekeeper's job at a hardware store in Boston. Apart from the work, he is also helping his coworker Ralphie to clear the test for a new job as a security guard. Other than this, Robert does not have much of social life and spends most of his time reading books at the local restaurant, where he often spots a young prostitute, Alina, stressing over her work. Robert gradually becomes aware of her struggles, especially after he watches her being forced by her pimp, Slavy, to entertain one of his clients against her will. After a few formal interactions, one night, as he offers her some food, Alina hesitantly walks to his table, but he graciously welcomes her and offers to have a seat with him. As they start talking, both get to know each other, and Robert tells her about his book reading hobby, which he adopted from his ex-wife. The meeting proves to be an icebreaker, and they become friends. After they walk out of the restaurant and Alina says goodbye to him, Robert witnesses her getting scared by Slavy, who slaps her and forcibly takes her with him. As Alina does not show up for the next few days, the restaurant owner informs Robert that she is admitted to the ICU after getting brutally beaten up by Slavy. He visits Alina in the hospital, where he spots another girl, Mandy, by her side. Seeing her genuinely concerned about Alina, he questions her about her condition, to which Mandy reluctantly tells him about Slavy's actions, as he regularly punishes the girls to keep them in line. Knowing that Slavy also threatened to kill Alina, Robert visits Slavy's club at night and offers money for her freedom, but Slavy refuses to take it and even denies knowing Alina at all. Enraged, Robert picks up a fight and kills all of his men in no time and quietly returning to his apartment, leaving no proof of his involvement. He resumes his work at the mart the next morning, where Ralphie informs him about eventually making progress in his training. Later on, Robert hears the news about the killings, but learns that the police are blaming it on the tough war between rival groups, and no one has any idea about the real killer. Finding out about the incident, the club owner and a Russian mafia leader, Mr. Pushkin, sends in his second-in-command, Teddy Renson, to investigate the killings. After examining the site, Teddy orders his men to find the security footage, and although offended of his controlling behavior, Frank Masters, a police detective secretly working for Pushkin, agrees to help him out. The next day, as Ralphie does not show up at the job, Robert visits his family restaurant, finding that a fire broke out and damaged most of the area. As Ralphie's mother is handling it alone, he offers help to clean up the mess. On the other hand, despite Frank's request for him to be lenient, Teddy meets Pushkin's partner, an Irish mobster John, and beats him to death for not providing the protection to their men. Frank is also forced to kill John's henchman, but later protests against this uncalled fight until Teddy reveals it was a message from Pushkin to ensure his supremacy above others. Continuing his investigations, Teddy meets Mandy, asking if she observed something unusual in Slavy's behavior before his murder or if he had any enemies, but she denies knowing anything about his public dealings. While reporting to Pushkin that they did not find any clue yet, Teddy tells him whoever killed Slavy and his men was perfect at his job and left no trail behind him, which makes him curious as he thinks the killer must be a professional. Learning this, Pushkin orders to find the killer at any cost and makes an example out of him so no one challenges him again. In the meantime, two corrupt cops visit Ralphie's mother's restaurant and demand she pay money, revealing they were the ones behind setting up the fire earlier after she refuses to comply. When they come out of the restaurant, getting the required amount, Robert stops them and confronts them about their actions, presenting a recorded video as a piece of evidence. As they start mocking him for being unaware of the consequences of intervention, Robert beats them up and forces them to return the money they took from different people, otherwise he would leak the footage to the media outlets. The duo eventually return the money, enabling Ralphie to rejoin his work the next day. Teddy meets Mandy again and forces her to reveal details about Robert and strangles her. Meanwhile, Ralphie eventually becomes the security guard and, considering Robert's support throughout the process, pays his gratitude to him. Teddy discovers Robert's photos through security footage of the club, learning of his involvement in killing Slavy and his men. At Robert's workplace, there is a burglary incident. A robber steals the money as well as a ring from his co-worker Jenny, but Robert notes the details about his appearance and his car. The same night, he once again takes the law into his hands and retrieves Jenny's ring, anonymously returning it to her. Teddy visits Robert's apartment, pretending to be a police officer investigating Slavy's murder. He also questions him about Mandy, as well as asks the reason behind him visiting that club on the night of the murder, but Robert satisfies him by saying he went there to meet a friend but could not find her. Robert watches him leave with Frank Masters as Teddy expresses his suspicion about him. Teddy starts running a background check on him, while Robert secures his apartment, leaving a false trail as well as setting up the security cameras. Teddy sends his assistant to confront Robert at the restaurant, but once again, Robert quickly takes him down within seconds as they watch from across the road. After shutting the power so no one can see him, Robert leaves the restaurant but takes pictures of Teddy and his men right in front of them before walking away. As they chase him down, Robert attacks Frank Masters but spares his life after noticing his police badge. Trying to find him, Teddy along with his men raid Robert's apartment and start searching the place while he watches them through the security cameras implanted everywhere around the house. As they stand there thinking about the evidence they found, Teddy learns about the setup and orders his team to track him down at the earliest. Robert meets his friend and former colleague at the intelligence agency, Susan, to ask her about Teddy. Talking to him after lunch, Susan's husband tells him how she was upset after he faked his death in an explosion in his car, but they are happy to see him alive again. Susan gathers the information and informs Robert that Slavy and his men were the East Coast hub for Pushkin's criminal operations. She tells him Pushkin is involved in all kinds of illegal activities from drugs to human trafficking, but no one can touch him as he has links in every department. According to her, Teddy Renson's real name is Nikolai Yachenko, a former trained member of the Russian secret police, but now works as Pushkin's right hand and enforces his rule on the Russian mafia. Explaining about his different henchmen including Frank Masters, Susan advises Robert to be careful as she knows Teddy won't stop before killing him. The next morning, Susan asks Robert why he is so concerned about Alina and is trying to track down her abusers. In response, Robert tells her he was never that close to Alina and is only tracking these criminals down because he is capable of doing this and thinks it is his responsibility. Learning this, Susan realizes it's how he always wanted to work and that's why left the force to deal with things his own way. She thinks that Robert always picks up the wrong ways of doing the right thing, but she still supports him. After visiting Susan, Robert breaks into Frank's house and tortures him to get information about Pushkin and his illegal activities. Although Frank does not cooperate initially, but gives in after Robert tries to suffocate him in his own car. At his orders, Frank leads him to one of Pushkin's secret money laundering warehouses. After introducing himself as the new guy from the police on Pushkin's payroll, Robert asks the in charge Andrei to transfer all the money to someplace else as their recent location has been compromised, but Andrei does not believe him. Seeing him confused, Robert tricks him and snatches his gun in the blink of an eye, holding him hostage and forcing him to comply with his orders. Later, he sends the workers home, distributing some money among them, and forces Frank Masters to call the police. After Robert scolds him for disrespecting his department, Frank reveals he was a good cop before getting involved in this mess, so Robert urges him to do the right thing. From the information provided by Frank, he retrieves a flash drive from his secret locker containing all the information about Pushkin's illegal operations. Meanwhile, the police arrest Frank, along with the rest of the staff, and recover millions of cash from the warehouse. Robert meets Teddy and confronts him by revealing to know about his troubled past when he was adopted by a couple who loved him a lot, but he did not pay back and killed them. Robert then gives him his number, asking him to contact him if he chooses to side with him, and leaves the restaurant. Upon turning to his apartment, he discovers the information from the flash drive and emails it to the FBI. He also finds details about Pushkin's oil tankers, which he later sets on fire, pledging to take him down. After getting orders from Pushkin, Teddy attacks the mart and holds the employees, including Ralphie and Jenny, hostage to blackmail Robert. After getting a call from him, Robert eventually arrives at the store, where he rescues Ralphie first and uses his help to kill them one by one, but gets hurt in the fight. After getting rescued by Ralphie, Robert asks him to distract the guys while he tracks them down. After he sets the fire alarm, Teddy finds out about Ralphie, but he shoots him. Shortly after, Robert shows up and kills Teddy with a nail gun, leaving the store. 3 days later, Robert arrives at Pushkin's mansion in Moscow to confront him about his crimes. Confessing that he came over to kill him, Robert tricks Pushkin into electrocuting himself while he walks out of the mansion. A few days after returning home to Boston, Robert is approached by Alina who has now recovered from her injuries and started a new life with the money he anonymously left to her. Without knowing the fact, she still thanks him for motivating her to become whatever she wants to be. Although successful in taking down Pushkin's gang, Robert decides to continue using his fighting skills and posts an online advertisement as the Equalizer and replies to people's calls for help online. The end.